What is going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with my little Danny Graves again, Howard Bender, and this is another edition of Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. What's going on, Howard? You made it through week 2. Very hard to do unscathed.
Well, let me tell you something, my little Ed Figueroa. I'm doing very well. I'm working through the waiver wire. I've been plodding through Twitter after taking the entire day off from social media yesterday. Well, listen, man, there's a lot to do. There's a lot going on. Waiver wire's crazy yesterday. I mean, obviously the carnage from week 2. There's a lot of picking up the pieces that need to be done, and apparently nobody out there knows how to evaluate waivers or trades properly. So it's been a little bit of work.
Oh, man. And I was ready to read you, and I'm still going to read you some of the players that were sent to me. Should I drop this player or not? And Howard, you might start losing your hair. I'm telling you, because it's scary, some of the names I have on this list, but it almost makes me want to do a whole tutorial about how exactly to trade, how to negotiate. Because Howard, let's start here. And I know it's based off the status of your team, especially with all the injuries. But when it comes to players you're expecting to perform who are not performing or are underperforming, how long will you give that player? How long will the leash be before you either trade that player or even drop that player? And I'm not talking about someone you drafted in the final 2 rounds. I'm talking even those 8th, 9th round players that you thought could be some nice darts.
Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously the lower that they were taken in the draft, the less leash that I'm going to give. But I'm looking at situations like people are frustrated and trying to dump off Allen Robinson. And I'm like, yeah, you can't dump off Allen Robinson. The dude will eat. Don't worry about it. It's just it was an unfortunate game against the Giants this past week. It was technically a smash spot, and it just didn't happen. But you know what? That happens all over the place. A guy's in a smash spot and he doesn't perform. Derrick Henry was in a smash spot last week. He didn't perform. Are you going to dump Derrick Henry? So, I sit there and I worry about stuff like that people are going to make those moves. It's got to be a case-by-case basis. Like anybody from Houston right now, I'm not cutting or dumping. They played Baltimore in week 1. They played the Chiefs in week 2. All right. They've even got a tough matchup this week. I'm trying to remember who it is off the top of my head, but I was like, how in the world did Houston? Yeah, I'm gonna pop into the schedule right now, and see. But yeah, Pittsburgh. Like
Yeah.
who did Houston piss off in the scheduling making department to get Baltimore, Kansas City, and Pittsburgh as the first 3 games of the season? Like those guys to me are like killer buy lows. Especially Deshaun Watson, who some people are legit telling me that they want to bench in place of like Mitch Trubisky or Gardner Minshew.
I'll do you one better. I have people that are telling me they want to drop him.
Come on.
I get it with the benching. I get it. You want to play the matchups. You're not happy. I get that. But dropping Deshaun Watson at this point is a big mistake. And
huge.
Yeah, it is. And don't do it. Just if it's one thing, the problem is bench size. That's the biggest thing, Howard, is there are leagues out there that have only 4 to 5 bench spots. So it's carrying 2 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks, very difficult to do. But if that's the case, you shouldn't be out on Deshaun Watson just yet.
I'm in a league with 3 bench spots. 3.
Wow.
All right. And there's no way I would drop Deshaun Watson. Like, you got to be a moron to do that.
Right. Now, let me bring up a quarterback in a similar situation with a tough start to the season. Daniel Jones. It's another player that people are done with. And we all at Fantasy Alarm warned you that the first 4 weeks are going to be rough for Daniel Jones. And now they're going to be even tougher without Saquon Barkley as they try to reconfigure their offense. More understandable from that regard to me, but Daniel Jones is everything as advertised thus far because he has a hard start to the season. Where do you stand on this guy?
Listen, I'm fine with Daniel Jones. If you don't have bench spots and you want to swap him out for somebody, I mean, it depends on who that somebody is. Like Gardner Minshew even is a borderline guy to do that. But, here's the thing. And I'll say this over and over again because we talked about Daniel Jones, and I'm in on Daniel Jones. I've been in on Daniel Jones, and moving forward, guess what? They're going to have to throw the ball a ton. The defense isn't good. So Daniel Jones is going to be throwing the ball all over the place. He's going to have to do that in order to get by. It's why it makes Dion Lewis a modest replacement, because he's just going to get the work on the passing downs and he'll get those checkdowns. But if you sat there and you drafted Daniel Jones and you didn't give yourself a backup, all right, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's got to be the dumbest thing. I got questions in week 1. Daniel Jones against San Francisco. Should I drop him and pick up Derek Carr? Why would you draft him then? Like,
right.
Why would you not pay attention? We gave you every bit of information that you could possibly want. Like, why would you not take a backup if you looked at his week 1 matchup and didn't like it? So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
There are going to be some players that we're going to read off of. I don't want to dissuade the audience at all, and I don't want to make like it's a joke, Howard, because as funny as it's going to be to read some of these names that have been tweeted at me, at the same time, it kind of frightens me a little bit. It makes me think, as a broadcaster in the industry, we're not doing our jobs when we're seeing some of these names that are on this list. And I know we can't blame ourselves.
We are doing our jobs. They're not listening. They have it already made up in their mind. And and even people who call up Sirius XM and they ask the questions, like, they'll sit there and they'll be like, well, who do I start out of this, and this? And you'll be like, oh, you'll give an answer and you'll give like legit reasons as to why they should do that. And then they come back to you and they're like, oh, I didn't listen because I thought this, and this. Well,
right.
Did you want to discuss that with somebody? Did you want to investigate the reasons behind it? People are coming up with their own narratives, and they're not listening to people who are actually, making more of an effort to research. They're just kind of like, oh, well, this is what I saw last week, and so that means that's exactly what I'm going to see this week.
Right. And again, it makes me shake my head when the most popular question I get going into a week is, do I start Snell over Connor? And then that report comes out and I get more questions from Ian Rappaport, who likes to cause trouble. That report comes out and I get flooded with even more questions. I'm sure you did as well, Howard. And people see that report and they're not going to do any research behind it. Well, Connor, did he practice? That's not the thought process for a lot of our audience. And I really don't understand why, because our articles and our writers are so in depth with the coverage that needs to be done, but everybody's still reading the headlines and that's it. And people want to treat fantasy football like it's a part-time job. You're not going to get the results that you want if you treat it like a part-time job.
No, not at all. You have to put in the work. You have to do the research. I got asked that 1,000,000 times this past week. I was like, Connor. Why Connor? Because it's Connor. Like, that's right.
Do you ever, when you get a question like that and it's that obvious and you're getting it so much, do you quote tweet and just write Connor, hoping people will see you answer that question for probably the 20th time? Or they'll still find a way. No, it's still, he's saying Connor. Maybe it's still Snell.
They don't read it. They don't read it. Listen, I post things on Twitter and I say, I will not answer any Twitter questions at all 2 hours before game time, because I'm doing the live stream and I'm doing this, and go to the chat room and go to, whatever you got to do to get your question answered. And sure enough, game time, I look at my Twitter timeline and there are 2 hours worth of start sit questions. I'm like, I told you not to. Oh, really? Like, I got to post office hours on my Twitter timeline, and guess what? And they'll still ignore it.
Office hours. Man, back in college, I feel like I lived in office hours. That's how much I struggled in class in college. But that's the thing. There's always office hours on fantasyalarm.com. There are always people in the chat. I feel like half the conversations that we have with our staff are about the chats. Every time it's the chats, because we care about what you want us to talk about, what you want us to cover. We care when your teams suck, but we get a little frustrated, let's just say, when we try to come back at you at, well, what was your reason why we apparently led you down the wrong path? and you don't say that you did any work. Well, I just started this. No, then that's on you. You have to take responsibility. You're hitting the submit button. It's advice for a reason. And if you want to fight us on our advice, we're not going to get into a back and forth. You clearly know what you're doing. Go forth and good luck. I will always say good luck, Howard. You'll see that any tweet I'm tagged with you that involves a question. If someone's going to be going back and forth, I'm literally going to be like, you obviously know what you're doing. Good luck.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Exactly. All those cliches and everything. So it's advice. But again, remember, you got to do a little bit of research as well. Please, we want everybody winning championships in 2020. Howard, I'm going to tell you this here. One of the funniest responses I got when it came to who to drop, and I got a lot of responses. Someone actually wrote an entire team, every New York Jet. So I guess we should start there because you and I know the Jets pretty well. And I'd say at this point, when it comes to the Jets and their offense, and I'm not going to try to make something out of nothing, but outside of Jamison Crowder, I don't want anyone from this team.
Nobody. I don't want Lev Bell. I don't want Frank Gore. I barely want Crowder. Darnold, not likely. Chris Herndon, I think he's a ghost right now. I mean, there's nobody. Anytime somebody sends me a question and involves a trade for a Jet, I'm like, that's an automatic no. Like, you don't want to put a Jet on your team.
No.
There's no reason to do it. You're not. It's not good business.
No, not at all. And they look just horrible. And it's not going to get much better, i.e. Adam Gase.
You can take out the word much. It's not going to get better.
It's not at all. But it makes it easy for us to be unbiased, though, when your team sucks year after year after year.
Unless you're our friend Michael Salfino, because he apparently still thinks that Adam Gase is a good, solid.
Oh, he thinks he's a genius?
Coach. Oh, I won't say genius, but he's like, oh no, the Jets have never underperformed without him. No team that he's ever coached has underperformed without him.
So when he gets fired and then in a year or two they win the Super Bowl, is he going to credit Adam Gase? Well, Gase's players, he started them off. He built the foundation.
He built the foundation.
Oh, that's terrible. No, that irks me that you even just told me that, Howard.
I love Michael Salfino. I just think he's got this like really crazy blind spot for Adam Gase, and I don't understand it. I literally do not understand that blind spot. But whatever. I mean, listen, if we all were in full agreement, the world would be harmonious and beautiful, and it's not.
No, especially after what we saw week 2 of the fantasy football season.
Oh,
yes.
Gross.
Here's some other names that are on this list, and here's some running backs that I got. Zach Moss. All of a sudden, a lot of people after just 1 week. What, you weren't fed enough in week 1 from him? You weren't impressed enough that after 1 week, that's it? I don't understand that, Howard. That's about 10 Zach Moss responses I got.
Yep. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. Keep him.
Cam Akers.
Cam Fakers?
Are we going down that road yet?
No, not really. I mean, obviously the dude's a little on the soft side because you come out of a game with a rib injury because you fell forward on top of a football. Come on, man. That's a bit much, I mean, I'm holding Cam Akers. I'm not dropping him. I mean, unless I have nobody. Like, if he's my top running back option and Mike Davis is on the waiver wire, then I'm grabbing Mike Davis and I'm dropping Cam Akers because at least Davis will get the touches now. So Cam Akers will forever be, as long as this season rolls on, until he shows something really spectacular, he's going to be in a three-headed monster in that backfield.
Right. If you're in a guillotine league, you can drop Cam Akers because your season could be done after this weekend. And I have Cam Akers on a guillotine league team. And yeah, that's what we call not ideal. You mentioned Mike Davis. Now, if you're not the McCaffrey owner and waivers that are still going, how much of your budget would you be comfortable putting on Davis if you need the running back, but you're not necessarily the McCaffrey owner?
Well, I mean, if you need the running back, then he's the guy in Carolina right now, and he will be the guy for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So, I mean, listen, I'm in a league where somebody legit put the full amount on him. They put $100
Wow.
out of 100 on him. And I thought I was like super crazy for I put 72 out of 100 on him. But I was like, I'm not the owner. I lost Saquon Barkley, and I'm not going to put a bid on, Dion Lewis or Devonta Freeman or Wayne Gallman. So I was like, all right, let me do this and let me go with him. I went 72 and still felt a little dirty about it.
Wow.
Nevertheless, I did not get him. Fine, I'm okay with that. So, but I mean, it's so funny, man. This is like, the ironic thing is that that's the only league where I made that move or I did that bid because I needed the running back. Every other league that I'm in, I went running back heavy early and have that depth. So, like in my Superflex league where, I lost both quarterbacks and Saquon Barkley and Cortland Sutton, I have plenty of depth at running back. Like I have no problem. Melvin Gordon, slot him in, throw a wide receiver into my flex, and it's like I'm good.
You're good.
But
you don't remember, because a lot of people have been also asking, well, do I look to pick up Mike Davis? I have a bench full of running backs, but he's still out there anyway. That's when you get to, he would be my 5th or 6th running back where I'm like, okay, I'm happy you're eager. I'm happy that you're watching the wire. That at least shows me that you're prepping and you're not just sitting on your team and you're like, oh, I have 4 healthy running backs. I'm good. But let's not go crazy. That's what I've been telling people, Howard. Let's not go crazy. I get the mentality, keep the competitive fire, always keep watching. The watch never ends. But at the same time, if it's running back 5 or 6 territory, Howard, I've been telling people just to stand pat.
If it's running back 5 or 6 territory for you, then clearly you have a shortcoming somewhere else. I don't care if it's wide receiver, if it's tight end, and maybe your quarterback sucks. Whatever the case may be, if going after Mike Davis, which will cost you a significant amount of your budget, if he's nothing but depth for you, and don't tell me, oh, I'm going to trade him to the McCaffrey owner then, because that's stupid too, because now you're going to trade Mike Davis and you lost all your budget for the rest of the season, and you're going to trade him for what? For one guy? I mean, what are you going to get in return from Mike Davis? It's like, I'm sure this dude who swiped the quarterback from me, swiped Jeff Driscoll from me in the Superflex League is going to come to me because I have such great depth on that team because I waited on quarterback. He's going to come to me and he's going to ask for one of my better players for Jeff Driscoll. And you know what? I'm going to tell him to go suck it. It's just bottom line. No, dude, you know what? It's a Superflex League. I'm not required to use a quarterback in that Superflex spot. So
whoa. You're not? Are you kidding me? I thought you absolutely had to.
Dude, I'll put Drew Sample in the Superflex spot before I trade this a quality player for Jeff Driscoll.
I'm so happy you said that. A lot of people think it's a misconception. A lot of people think you're guaranteed, locked in, you're starting 2 quarterbacks. And no, that's not how it goes. Maybe week 1, you try it out and then you see where you're at from there. But you can't go into a super flex every single week thinking you have to start 2 quarterbacks because then you're going to make cruddy lineup decisions because every decision you make is going to be based off of that flex option that you're requiring to be quarterback.
Well, I mean, to start off the season, though, like if you're starting off the season, everybody's grabbing 3 QBs off the wire and you've got 2 quality guys like this dude who did this move clearly just to block me. He already had Dak Prescott and Baker Mayfield, right? So I'm not starting Jeff Driscoll over the next couple of weeks against, over either one of those guys at all. But I mean, if you have those 2 QBs and you're locked down, that's really what you want because more often than not, quarterbacks do score the most points because of the passing yards and whatever. But if you're replacing them like Jeff Driscoll or somebody like that, and that's another thing. It's Jeff Driscoll without Cortland Sutton, So what's going to happen with that, with that offense? And Vic Fangio has just been terrible right now, absolutely terrible. But, you could end up with, crap points from that, lame duck quarterback. And then, yeah, you are better off using a receiver or a running back if you have that room. To start off the season, though, yeah, I mean, listen, it's the way the draft goes. You want to have two solid QBs there. If you don't, though, if you lose one to an injury, then it's not the end of the world. You work around it and you use other viable options.
Yes, and you don't have to spend up completely. You don't have to waste your entire budget necessarily getting Gardner Minshew necessarily, because you during the season you're going to see those teams that are holding an extra quarterback, a third or some even a fourth that I've seen. They're going to start dropping those guys. The pressure will be on, so you don't have to make it all up in 1 week. And I think that's something else with waivers that I've been harking on when it came to Alarm After Hours, saying that hey, yes, you might have lost Saquon, big blow to your team. But it's going to be very difficult to swing for the fences via waivers and fab and make up all of those points. And if you do it little by little and at least get someone, not just put one bid in, but bid on multiple running backs and then change your bids and make sure your bids are prioritized so that you get who you want. That's something else people don't do, making sure the order is right. If you're going to do that, and you work little by little, you'll see long term, you'll be able to maintain the balance of your team. You'll have fab or your waiver priority, and little by little, you'll start making up for Saquon, Howard. Does that all make sense?
Of course it makes sense. I mean, here's the thing is that when a running back goes down, people just assume that the next man up is going to be that guy. That works in some situations, right? Like, if Dalvin Cook goes down, I'm pretty confident that Alex Madison is going to have himself a great season, when he gets those touches. If Connor goes down, Benny Snell going to see, great. It's the system that's working for that player. If Christian McCaffrey goes down and you pick up Mike Davis, if you think that Mike Davis is going to give you Christian McCaffrey production or even 75% of Christian McCaffrey production, well, then you're just fooling yourself. And you just obviously you don't understand the game of football. It's the same thing with Saquon Barkley. If he goes down, you think Dion Lewis is going to carry this load himself? Do you think that Wayne Gallman's going to be the top guy and be an every down back? Do you think Devonta Freeman, okay, who sucked last year, was hurt and only played 2 games the year before, was in decline the 3 years ago? Like, you think that this guy's going to step in and he's going to do what Saquon Barkley does? Look at the offensive line. There's no way that Devonta Freeman is going to touch what Saquon Barkley is capable of doing. So, it's a case-by-case basis there as far as, which running backs you're going to want. But any of these guys who we're seeing on the wire right now, right? Mike Davis, Jerick McKinnon, Myles Gaskin, Jeff Wilson, even Joshua Kelly to a certain extent.
Yeah, why is he still available in some leagues? I've seen him there too, and I'm just shocked by it. Like, after week 1, that was proof enough. I don't get, why is he still out there? Please pick him up if he's still there. You have to at this point. And I don't care. Austin Eckler could get 300 carries in a game. I'm still going to be focused on Joshua Kelly.
Right. But these guys who are sitting here out on the waiver wire, I mean, don't expect huge numbers from them. Like, just don't. None of them are in a situation that it looks like it's going to be super positive for them. Like Jordan Howard, who's sort of been pushed back on touches in Miami in favor of Myles Gaskin. He's still that goal line back. He's still getting those touchdown carries. So
no dropping for Jordan Howard. He was the next guy I was going to get to.
Oh, okay.
So I know that you're invested, and I actually received a lot of Jordan Howard and Matt Breida. So I was going to ask you, as an investor in Jordan Howard, where do you stand right now? Not only whether or not to keep him on your team, but whether or not to start him.
I mean, listen, if you don't have anybody and you have to start him, well, then that's one thing. But yeah, I would probably, I would probably put him on the bench and let this situation kind of figure itself out. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot of love for Myles Gaskin. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards just keeping him on the bench right now. I definitely don't want to drop him unless you're really sitting there with like a super short bench and you just don't have the room.
Yeah. Now, what about Matt Breida?
Same thing. tuck him on the bench.
Because I know in one, was it one of the FSGA leagues that you double tapped, or maybe that was even before, maybe that was the post-draft where you drafted both Jordan Howard and Matt Breed. I think that was the post-draft where you double tapped them.
Yeah, whatever.
So you were on the end. So we were in a lot of drafts together and a league together. By the way, in the host league that we're in for SiriusXM, I believe, what was it, Lisa Ann spent like $667 on Devonta Freeman. And I was thinking in my head, man, that was a lot bigger than I would have gone.
Yeah, that's definitely bigger than I would have done also. When did those waivers become Tuesday night and not Wednesday night? That's what I want to know. Like, who's the jackety jackass who suddenly turned all of the host leagues into Tuesday night waivers instead of Wednesday? When you're in 29 leagues and you have everything kind of mapped out, there are certain things that you expect to be consistent. Like every single time we've done a host league, and I've been on SiriusXM for what, 10 years, right?
Wow.
Every time we've done a host league, on My Fantasy League is the site, and waivers process on Wednesday.
Right.
Not this year, though.
Not this year.
Not this year. Let's make it Tuesday night for no good reason.
Right. And by the way, I just love it. And I don't know if you've been talking about it on Fantasy Alarm, Howard, but I'm starting to get messages where people like, for instance, Cheyenne Bailey, which I thought was hilarious, are saying, man, I pulled a Fensty. I fell asleep on Tuesday night without putting my claims in. So I didn't know if you had said, I'm like, oh, people remember that from last year. Not this year. How you combat that, by the way, is setting alarms on your clock for various points during the day. That's how I was able to combat that for the rest of the season. New year, I'm going undefeated. I'm not falling asleep, and I can't anyway because I got alarm after hours. So there you go. Fantasy Alarm helping me win those rings, Howard.
I love it. I love it.
Just a few
you need
more
to do
games.
that, though. Like, if you're playing in multiple leagues, you need to set, like, little alarms for all that. I'll never miss another host league waiver. Oh, you know what? The post-draft league, that waiver is on Wednesday.
Dude,
that's Wednesday.
People need to stop picking up players. It's been 2 weeks. We haven't played a matchup. I don't even know how you can pick up players. People are still setting their lineups, and they don't realize, these are industry analysts that don't realize that in 2 weeks, we have not played a single matchup. We have not made a single ad drop for that reason.
Yeah, we have.
We have? No, it hasn't played. We've had buys both weeks.
What are you talking about, dude? Let me go to it right now.
I'm telling you, we've had buys both weeks.
In the post-draft.
Yes.
Post NFL free agency fantasy football draft.
I'm pretty sure, yes. I'm just going to now.
You're not in this one with me. I don't know what league you're talking about.
Oh, I'm talking about the one that was literally the Saturday night where we drafted and people kept needing you to change things because you had commissioner access.
Oh, yeah. I don't think we activated that league.
No, we did not. But people are still setting their lineups, and it's driving me crazy.
Probably because they think that this is the league that's active. When right, let's give it up for our commissioner.
Oh man, we gotta make sure.
Top-notch job there.
Jeez, I'm just really confused. Wow. Someone else I'm confused about, I don't own him anywhere, but when people are asking me, Howard, just another player or two will go over. Ronald Jones at this point. Did you expect Leonard Fournette to be as involved as he was in week 2? Because any Leonard Fournette question I was getting outside of desperation, you've lost a few guys and you need to start him, I wasn't into starting him, and I'll take the hit on that. I didn't think his role would be as big.
Yeah, I didn't think his role was going to be as big either. It's kind of funny. Obviously Arians was looking for any excuse possible, and once, Ronald Jones fumbled that exchange between him and Tom Brady, well, so be it. That's the way it went, and then Leonard Fournette took over, and now I look at it right now, and I'll hold Ronald Jones on my bench for another week, right? Just to keep myself covered there and have that handcuff in case something happens to Fournette. But, I fully expect Leonard Fournette to see, 15 to 20 carries this week. And I don't think Ronald Jones is going to get much work.
I mean, need any more convincing that they don't want Ronald Jones, despite Bruce Arians gassing him up a week before the season? I mean, let's review. They drafted Keyshawn Vaughn. They signed Shady McCoy. They picked up Leonard Fournette. What other proof do we need that they don't want this guy and that Bruce Arians is a liar for what he said the weeks leading up to the season? How much he loves Ronald Jones. It's his backfield. BS.
Oh, it's total, right? Bruce Arians is a liar. He's a liar. He's saying things so that Ronald Jones doesn't become some mopey prick in his locker room. That's really what it comes down to. But yes. Listen, that's the way it is. And that's one of the things that you have to do as a fantasy owner. All right. Not just listen to coach speak. Listen, there are some cases where it is, but Bruce Arians has never been somebody who gives all his information about Mike Tomlin, Kenny Colbert from Pittsburgh. They say bell cow guy, James Conner, that's who it is. That's who I expect it. And he said specifically, Tomlin did. I'm not going to have an injury. I'm not going to have Conner lose his job because of an injury. All right. So if he loses the job because of bad performance, that's one thing, but not because of an injury. And that's why I was like, you got to go back to James Conner this coming week as far as Ronald Jones. Like you just laid it out right there. They showed you a million different ways of why they don't want Ronald Jones in as their number one back. And Bruce Arians is just, he's just trying to keep the harmony going and trying to keep the peace. And, maybe he was just being careful in case, Fournette struggled early on. But once he got that excuse to take him out, that was it.
We have been talking about players that you've tweeted into us that you're thinking of dropping. You don't have to be that desperate with some of these guys, but we will continue doing that on fantasyalarm.com. You can catch Howard along with Jim Bowden on Fantasy Alarm on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio all week long, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And then you can catch me with various hosts from fantasyalarm.com on Alarm After Hours, depending on the day. Some days it's midnight to 2 a.m. Eastern. Other days it's 1 to 3 a.m.
Well,
Eastern.
you could say it's game days, Monday and Thursday night where there's games, then you're live. The other days when there are no games, you're not.
Yes. Wink, wink. He's Howard Bender. I'm Justin Fensterman. We thank our guy, John and Peppa, managing editor of FantasyAlarm.com, for producing this live stream. Hey, we always dominate because there isn't any other option. We just win.